that noise? Yeah, that was Sabaton last week. I was seeing them play at the Fillmore in Silver Springs, Maryland. How's everyone doing today? Yeah, I did something a little weird there. I don't normally do that. I enjoy a little bit of music. I figured that a few of you folks might want to figure out kind of who is this guy, Tactard Ted, who is saying all this shit that you won't hear on the mainstream media every night. And it's me. I'm a metal fan. I'm a veteran of the United States Army. A patriot, whether you believe that or not, that's your problem. So, that's a little bit about me. Oh, by the way, I'm an old dude. Speaking of old dudes, it was kind of refreshing, an old dude that was at my facility last night. Got into a conversation with another guy, and his topic that he was talking about was Ukraine. Yes, Ukraine. And his take was not so different than my take, and for him it was like it was an epiphany that he had recently came to it. And he talked about being a child, and yes, this dude was older than me, during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And he talked about how we, as a country, lost our shit during the Cuban Missile Crisis because we didn't want Soviet missiles based in Cuba. We didn't want Soviet troops that were a threat based in Cuba. And then he said something that lines up with what I've been saying for a while. He says, how in the hell do we expect Russia to deal with the same sort of threat? How do we expect them to be okay with that when we weren't? And I can't say the old fellow is wrong. Not at all. In fact, he was very, very much correct. And he had some interesting commentary. His family were from Eastern Europe originally. He was first generation American. So I'm wondering how many people are waking up. I'm wondering how many people are suddenly realizing the media has told them a line of shit. The government's told them a line of shit. And I have to be a little bit heartened, you know, as a lot of you folks know, Tulsi Gabbard, probably the only Democrat I would even think of voting for, because a lot of her thoughts are genuine. They aren't simply a party line that she feels that she must adhere to. She's left the Democrat Party. She said, screw it, done, screw it, out of there, right? So yesterday, when I found a video, which I've posted on the Tactard Ted YouTube channel, of lefties, young lefties, calling AOC out for her support of neo-Nazis and the war in Ukraine, wanting to flush billions down the toilet, just simply for Joe Biden's political ambition, which is actually Barack Obama's political ambitions that were realized in 2014 when they were able to help orchestrate a coup that overthrew the duly elected president of Ukraine. It makes me really happy to see that some folks are waking up. Now, I'm not saying that I agree with these folks on everything. In fact, then I may have very differing opinions on military force. I am for military force when the sake of your country depends on it. I'm not for military force anymore when it's just national adventurism, when it's imperialism, when you're wanting to expand the scope of what your country controls. United States, third biggest country on the planet. We really, really should look at maintaining what's inside of our own borders. We should figure out how to be a regional power and not be world police. That's my opinion. A lot of you folks may or may not agree with that. But don't be surprised when you get involved in somebody else's backyard, when you want to put a threat on somebody else's border that they don't get a little pissed off. And that's what's happened to Russia. And you know, the amazing thing is is the duplicity of the media. And a lot of folks are buying this shit. So either Putin is dying, Putin is dead, Putin is weak, Putin is scared, Putin's living in a bunker, and his military is absolutely corrupt and incompetent and just losing miserably to the second largest army in Europe, Ukraine. Or Putin's a brilliant mastermind, he's an evil genius, and his military is a direct threat to NATO. Now, you can't have both ways. Either Putin is a lunatic that doesn't make any sense, who's dying, he's on his deathbed, he's been on his deathbed for 3 or 4 years, his military is just riddled with incompetence and stupidity and couldn't fight their way out of a wet paper bag. Or they're actually a threat, he's a competent leader, and he is a threat. Which is it? Which is it? Can't be both. Can't be both. So which Putin are you listening to about this week? Is this the evil genius who's going to dominate the world and put together the Soviet Union and move ever westward until he totally engulfs the EU? Or is this the old, sick, pitiful man who's sitting in a bunker scattering shit at the walls because he has no clue what's going on and he's terribly upset that his army is being totally decimated and defeated? Which is it? Which is the Putin that we have this week? Which is the Russian army we have this week? Do we have the Russian army that's weak and incompetent and not able to do anything without having its troops automatically surrender, or do we have the evil juggernaut that's crushing shit in its way and destroying cities of poor, innocent, helpless civilians? Which is it? And sometimes I have to question the sanity of the Western press. It's pretty easy to question because you get articles with headlines like, Putin's weapons aren't so good. In all these attacks, he's only killed 19 people. So obviously his weapons aren't that deadly. Really? So what you're saying is you'd be happier if there were a ton of civilian casualties? Perhaps you're looking at this the wrong way, which I tend to believe you are. Perhaps the pinpoint targeting and abilities of Putin's weapons are far beyond anything you imagined they would be. Perhaps his surgical strikes that are not producing a lot of civilian casualties and are doing a lot of damage to infrastructure, military compounds, and that sort of thing. Maybe they're a lot better targeted than they are in the West. Because it seems to me, if you're really counting how effective the weapons are by body count, then you seem to be missing the whole idea behind a surgical or pinpoint strike. And it also seems that a lot of you folks are misunderstanding the idea of restraint. You're misunderstanding how or why. I'm not sure. I will tell you, as a Westerner who married into a Russian family, the people in the eastern parts and much of Ukraine, Russians consider them the same people as they are. Who don't they consider the same? Well, the Banderites, the Galicia type people, the people who at the end of World War II were fighting Russians and Poles and killing them equally because of their xenophobic idea that somehow they were the chosen people of Europe. You know, not the Germans that they had just helped a year earlier, but no, they were the chosen people of Europe for whatever reason. I can tell you, one of my wife's uncles, who's passed away, Evgeny. He was a very nice gentleman. I've met him and talked to him more than once. In fact, he was nice enough to give us a lift a couple times in his car. Great guy. Yevgeny was born in Ukraine, technically Ukrainian. Good guy. Sorely missed in the family. And I don't know too many families in Russia that don't have branches in Ukraine. And I don't know too many ethnic Russians in Ukraine that don't have branches in Russia. So, unlike our Civil War, where we had no problem inflicting casualties on civilians at night, at least the Federal Army didn't, the Russians used a lot of restraint. And it's amazing because now it's starting to come out in the press, something I've been telling you folks for weeks, is that a lot of Russians have not been happy with Putin saying that he was going in too soft. He didn't go in strong enough, hard enough. He did not wipe out all this infrastructure on the first week of the war. Now, I will tell you, it's funny. I don't hear any retractions. A lot of the pundits in the Western media said Putin didn't have the ability to do this. Did not have the ability to do this. Couldn't do it. Not able to do it. Apparently the last 3-4 days now, we're proving that wrong. And that's also kind of heartening that General Surovikin is continuing the missile attacks. He isn't letting up. This is continuing. We're into the 3rd or 4th day now. And it continues to go on. Now, as I previously mentioned, and I know that I hit repetitive same topics, but I got new people listening or watching possibly. I want to kind of keep them up to date. Ukrainian government does not want any of the damage to get out. Number one, they are just simply trying to limit the damage, limit the damage to the morale that is going to be done in Ukraine. Putting up pictures and saying everything is fine, everything is wonderful while parts of your city is on fire. This is the sort of shit Joseph Goebbels did in World War II. And I have said this for months now, that everything that's going on in Ukraine reminds me of the last year and a half of the war in Germany. The absolute denial of what's going on, the denials of the reality on the ground. It's interesting. You can juxtapose everything with history. I hear there's rumblings now. Some of the guys say, well, apparently Russia looks to be that they're possibly going to be returning to having the initiative. They'll be taking the initiative away from the Ukrainians. Oh my God, the Ukrainians had the initiative. Of course, they just came off of a major failed offensive, offensive that failed to capture any major cities that the Russians have been dominating. Putin's failed army, his army that's so corrupt that actually has captured 20% of Ukraine and not going to give it back anytime soon. That they've regained the initiative. Well, the Germans had the initiative in December of 44 when the last of the Ardennes offensive, which some of you guys who are only lightly associated with history, you may have heard of it. It's called the Battle of the Bulge. That's the common name for the German Ardennes offensive. For those of you guys who are really, really tight on history, you know it as Watch on the Rhine operation. But it's the same deal. The Germans had the initiative. They seized the initiative. And eventually, their initiative, their assault, everything petered out. And they lost the initiative. The initiative returned to the Allies. And within a short time, the nut was cracked. And by the nut being cracked, I mean you had a Soviet flag flying over Berlin and Germany capitulated. I just find it all pretty, there's a lot of denial in the press. The lack of air defense systems in Ukraine have shown themselves. And Zelensky is crying he needs air defense systems. He needs air defense systems from the West. He's got to have them. Now, getting an air defense system, you just don't snap your fingers and drop Patriot batteries or Iron Dome or whatever you're going to put in there. You just don't snap your fingers and they magically appear and your guys press a few buttons and they work. Air defense systems are fairly intricate. They take training. They also take time to be prepared. So if we're talking about taking U.S. systems out of mothballs and sending them to the Zelensky regime, it's going to take a few months to get them ready and get them over there. I don't believe that Ukraine has a few months. I honestly don't believe they have a few months for these things to do any good. Also, there's the question of training Ukrainians. Now, this is where we get into a sticky situation. It's a situation as an American don't even like talking about because it really sticks in my craw. This is where you're going to have American quote-unquote contractors. And by the way, I've done overseas contracting. You're going to have contractors, not military, guys who may just came off active duty 2-3 months ago, who are intricate with the systems. They're going to be paid a lot of money to go to Ukraine and run these systems. And they are going to, for their trouble, some of them are not going to come home. They will, if they do come home, like one fellow this week, I believe, from Idaho, they're going to come back in an adult-sized hefty bag. And once again, I will state, I believe a lot of this is by design, that there is a very devious purpose to seeing patriotic Americans go to Ukraine and get killed. The Biden administration is all about that because those folks may be a problem for his administration later on. Those people probably aren't going to want to hang out when they go around confiscating firearms if that happens. If the government decides to crack down on whatever, those folks aren't the ones who are probably going to sit around for that because, well, they're patriots and they're not afraid to use violence. So it really suits Biden that they go overseas and they don't go overseas to help aid the Ukrainian army, which is his pet project, and they don't come back. He really doesn't care about your life. He really doesn't care. You are a problem, and he sees that, hey, you might kill some Russians, and that's a plus, and if you don't come home, that's a bigger plus. But excuse me for thinking ahead. Excuse me for giving Joe Biden a little bit of credit. Or if not Biden, at least his handlers, his minders, aka Barack Obama. And I just, I think you folks need to be really aware that there are Americans being killed there. And there are going to be more Americans killed because the sophisticated weapon systems don't run themselves. The air defense systems do not run themselves. In fact, we haven't had a full counting of how many NATO military guys have been killed in Ukraine. And there have been some. Early on when the Russians hit the training center out by Lvov, a lot of the people killed, not only just Western volunteers / mercenaries, but there were also NATO trainers there who got bloated up. And we're not going to talk about that because this is all that clandestine shit. Because we just, we don't have the testicular fortitude to stand up for what we're doing. We're so happy, we're so proud of what we're doing, we won't dare sign our names to it. That should be a problem. That should be a problem. Congressional Medal of Honor. Okay, Congressional Medal of Honor. Show me where there's honor in doing clandestine shit that you won't sign your own name to. Where's the honor in that? You know, we talk a lot of shit about being above the fray and above being certain things, but we don't do it. We don't live up to it. And if we don't get a handle on the elites, be they leftist, right-wing warmongers, left-wing warmongers, folks that are intent on making Raytheon rich, and line their own pockets, then we're down the shitter. And with what's going on with the European energy woes, I think the United States is going to find itself out on a limb by itself. Because I don't think that Germany is going to allow itself to go all the way down to a third world shithole to appease the United States government. I think at some point, whether the current leadership in Germany wakes up and starts worrying about Germans, or whether those folks are thrown out and replaced with people who will put Germany first, or put France first, or, well, we've already seen that Italy has put somebody in who will supposedly put Italy first, or maybe even the Brits will finally put somebody in that will put Britain first. I think we're going to be treading a very slippery slope here, folks. And you see the cracks forming. You also you're starting to see the UN for what it is. The UN, you know how we cherish the secret ballot here. Well, there was a vote that came up to condemn Russia over its the referendums. They wanted to condemn Russia over that. And the Russians are like, cool, have your vote. Let's do it secret ballot. That way, nobody's going to be coerced or damaged for their vote. They refused. You know, that secret ballot, something that's important for me or you, it's not important internationally, apparently. And when the vote did come down, 35 countries abstained. 5 countries voted no. 35 abstained. I do believe if it had been a secret ballot, you'd have seen even more, and let's face it, you only abstain to save yourself the indignity of voting with Russia. And this way you have plausible deniability, at least publicly. You can tell the United States, hey, I didn't vote against you. I decided not to vote. I didn't vote against you. Because they don't want to be bullied. They don't want to have whatever retribution that President Potato and his administration will mete out. So anyhow, folks, that is the rant for today. Hopefully everybody has a good rest of the week. I would get into about Bakhmut looking like it's ready to fall, but hell, I've been saying Bakhmut is ready to fall for 8 weeks now. It's about time. No major reversals there, but it's taken a long time to crack that nut. And when you are worried about your own casualties, that tends to be the situation. If you go in slow and you do it very methodical, you got a better chance of letting your guys live. Now, if you want to do the bum rush, then yeah, you can expect heavy casualties. And I just don't think that Russia is prepared to toss a lot of body bags into planes to send home. All right, guys. Well, that's it. I'll talk to y'all later.